What's up everyone? So, Marvel Studios' Eternals is finally here, directed by Chloe Zhao and with a packed cast with the likes of Angelina Jolie, Richard Madden, Gemma Chan, Salma Hayek and loads more. Eternals introduces audiences to a new race of superhuman beings within the MCU. Before we get into this review though, I just want to say straight away that I knew nothing about the Eternals as characters or their stories. I knew their names and I knew they were originally created by Jack Kirby, and that was it. So because of that, I decided that I would get a couple of books before I saw the movie just to get an idea of who these characters were, what their motivations were, and also to find out a little bit more about the Deviants and the Celestials. So I picked up these two books here, the first one being by Neil Gaiman, which I would recommend if you do want to find out more about the Eternals. I think it's a pretty good place to start. It's a good read. It is full of lore. There's a lot going on in this book, but it's not too overwhelming. So yeah, a good read. I'd recommend it. Okay, so with all that said, is Eternals worth watching? Is it worth your time? And is it another great addition to the MCU? My honest opinion is it's a movie that you should absolutely go and see. It's definitely worth watching. Just like in the comics, there is a lot of lore to be covered and mythology that is added to the MCU from the Eternals movie, and it did run the risk of being overwhelming, especially with the introduction of so many characters and moving points. With that being said, I do feel like Chloe managed it very well, and I would like to say that with a cast as packed as this, that this or that character stood out for me, but I feel like they all had their moments to shine, even if it was sometimes limited. I did find that I did want more of Salma Hayek's character Ajax. I felt that audiences didn't really get a chance to know her themselves, and hopefully we'll get to see more of her in the future. But as it was, yeah, we just didn't really get a deep understanding of who her character was. Also, we don't see much of Kit Harington's character Dane Whitman as much as I thought we would, but that's not exactly a bad thing, as this movie purely focuses on the Eternals, just as it should. I feel like adding too many other different characters in there would make it a lot more disjointed. Now, what that also means, outside of a few name drops here and there, you could be forgiven for forgetting that you're watching a Marvel movie. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's completely down to your preference, but you should know that this is a much slower paced story that puts the characters and their individual journeys at the forefront of the story. And that's not to say that there's no action, because there is, and when it does happen, it's done really well. Seeing these almost gods among humans doing their thing, by the time we get to the third act, things really pick up. It's a wild ride, and it definitely put a smile on my face. From start to finish, one thing I kept thinking about Eternals is how elegantly beautiful of a film it is. The original music, composed by Ramon Djawadi, who some might be familiar with the opening of Game of Thrones, adds a grand, majestic soundtrack to scenes as they play out. The cinematography used by Zhao takes the audiences through different points in time and across the globe. They're all stunning, vibrant colours and a sense of gentle beauty to them. As mentioned before, the story is slower paced, but it did keep me engaged, and if you're familiar with the comics, then you'll appreciate everything that's been put in here, and the characters' inner struggles will really hit home with audiences, as these superhuman beings convey a deeper humanity at times than some of the past Marvel heroes. I think that because there is so much to take in with the Eternals movie, that you really do have to pay attention, or you might run the risk of becoming confused. This movie also introduces audiences to Celestials with their towering, foreboding presence. And I mean, we are over 20 movies into the MCU, and we've seen all sorts of weird and wonderful characters, but these guys are probably too out there for some to comprehend. This is where things can become a little bit tricky, because even with my limited knowledge, and even if I hadn't read the comics, I knew that the Eternals was going to be a vastly different movie with some weird designs and ideas. That may not work for some, but with all that said, if you just go into this and go along for the journey, you'll find a rich and meaningful story in here about love and family. Also, for those saying that this movie is woke, well, you're an idiot, because everything in this movie feels natural, and at no point does it feel like there's a forced agenda. Going into this, I didn't expect to like this movie as much as I did. With all that's been said about the movie before, I went in expecting a more average movie, and I came out being completely surprised. I would even go so far as to say that, in my opinion, Eternals is without a doubt one of the best Marvel movies that's been made. It completely subverted my expectations. I won't go into spoilers, but I feel like the way that the story was handled, again, it's a slower story, there's a lot of talking, there is action in between, but I feel like the things that happen within the movie are really well done, and sometimes you just won't see it coming. So for me, I feel like this movie could have been a standalone film in the MCU, wouldn't need a sequel, but if they do make a sequel, I'd be all for it. Getting to spend more time with these characters and learning more about them would be very welcomed, and maybe more time spent with certain characters and giving them a chance to breathe is exactly what is needed. So in short, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you haven't seen the Eternals yet, then make sure you go and watch it, then come back, leave your comments, let me know what you thought about it. Eternals is out now in cinemas and will most likely be making its way to Disney Plus in the near future, probably by the end of the year. Thanks for watching this review. If you liked it, you know what to do. Hit the like button and leave a comment, as it all helps the channel. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you next time.
You know what's never saved the planet? Your sarcasm.